Okay, all right. Welcome everybody to our work session. Um, it is now 6:35. I am going to call the meeting to order. Um, Board, I want to ask a question. Since we do have BBS, they are waiting. And so I wanted to ask if you mind if we just switched committee and policy review.
Fine by me.
No objection here.
Terry?
No objection.
Grace?
You mean switch the places of the
Yeah, so like have committee go before policy review.
Sure, I have no problem with that.
All right, Tracy, you said yes. Miss Carey?
Okay with me.
All right, okay. Thank you, everybody. All right, so at this time, we'll have statements from the public.
Okay, on our list here, the first speaker is Kiana Washington. And I don't have option to let her in the room.
Laser, that's still you, right?
Yeah, I can give it to
Tracy? Yes, thank you.
hold on a second, sorry. Kiana was in, but she's no longer in the waiting room.
Okay, let's move forward with the next one. Just, and maybe it was technical difficulty. She comes back, we'll move forward that way. But let's go with the next person.
Next person is Jamal Thomas.
Long time. Okay.
And do I have the permission to let them in the room? Yes, I see him here. I'm letting him in now.
Okay.
It says joining.
Hello, Mr. Thomas. How are you?
Wonderfully well. How are you?
We're fine. Thank you so much for joining us. Just wanted to let you know we do have at this time a 2-minute clock. So that'll get started. I'll let you know. Like soon as pretty much you start talking to start, I guess ask a question or whatever you would like to say, it'll get started. Just as a reminder that we don't allow discussion of personnel matters during at our public sessions. Okay. Can you're muted? Yeah.
Oh, so I didn't. Okay, so I know we're going right into it. No problem.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you guys for having me up. I'm Jamal Thomas. I was a student in Greenburgh, at the time Central 7 school district, and have a whole bunch of friends who have kids in the district now. I did want to just touch base on kind of the board's strategic plan. What was done over the course of 2016 to now through 2021, and get a gauge of where the board kind of feels point by point, where they had what's been accomplished in those particular spaces. Another major concern has just been around the pandemic. I want to make sure not to bring, quote unquote, personnel into this. With that said, I want to understand the board's line of thinking when it comes to the fact that a change needed to occur when it comes to the superintendent of schools, and in the choosing the new superintendent of schools, again, not specific to him as an individual, understanding what focus has been put on kind of culturally relevant pedagogy, how the new board, how the new this new superintendent that will potentially be joining us, how he's going to bring that to the space without, when in his last role, it doesn't seem that there was a lot of that based on some research that I have been able to take a look at. His current district is substantially more homogenous than ours. So just curious to find out what thoughts have been brought around, particularly when and where we are in the country, on how that is going to ultimately affect the students of Greenburgh. And then the last thing I will say is You know what? It's 11 seconds left, so we'll leave it at that. I thank you guys for the opportunity to share this evening, and I hope to hear from you all on the answers to my questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. I will say I can answer some of what you're asking. As far as the strategic plan, it does end in June, this June 30th. And so we have been discussing in various meetings how the board will move forward. The last time we did it, we had a variety of stakeholders participating in that, and we were led by a consultant, I believe, and we have not discussed exactly how, but I believe we are definitely committed to having stakeholders participate in the planning of our new strategic goals. As far as your questions about our decision, how we came to our decision in regards to the finalists in our search, you two will be able to see. I'm not sure if you participated in any of the community forum that we had. Also, we did also get an impression survey, so that also helped, I believe, inform us in regards to how what the community was thinking. And overall, I can speak for myself, and I really believe with the whole board overall, is that we moved forward in a process that we believe was transparent, fair, and in the best interest of our children. In order to go deeper, I would have to have all of the strategic plans out. Not I, the board, would have to have the strategic plans out and be able to go point by point, but that's part of my answer. Terry, I see your hand is up.
Yes, so just in response to the last part of your comments about speaking for the entire board about the process being fair and transparent, it certainly was not transparent, as I have said before. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but it certainly was not transparent. And I would say to you, Jamal, as I noted in the two votes, the two public votes that we had, the first one being hiring a search firm, I voted no to do that, and I stated why. And you can go back and check the minutes of that, since I'm not supposed to talk about personnel. And in the last vote, I also voted no, because for the obvious reasons. I didn't think it was transparent, and I don't think we should be making a change for the reasons I've stated, not the least of which we're on the right track and have
Terry,
a lot of
I'm
great
sorry.
programs. I didn't say anything about personnel. I said we have a lot of great programs. We have a lot of great programs.
I know, Terry,
Where's personnel programs? We have a lot of great programs that was instituted by our current superintendent.
Terry, just hold on for a second. All I was going to say that you are going down that road. So if we can be mindful of that.
Well, thank you for letting me know.
Terry.
But I didn't go down the road because I know how far, I know the ledge. And I didn't cross the ledge. But thank you for that advisement. I appreciate it.
I would just love to hear from the other board members if possible as well.
David.
I felt it was not a good time to make a change, and that's why I abstained.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Carey.
Yes, I just wanted to say that we as a board, the majority of us, felt that we at this particular time made a decision, as you said, that was going to benefit our children. The person who I feel was qualified had children first on their agenda. So I am happy to say that I think that we're moving on and that the paradigm will prove to be a good one.
Thank you, Ms. Carey. Okay, I think we'll get back to you to answer. Like I said, where you at? Oh, there you are, Mr. Thomas. We will get back to you in regards to the strategic planning question. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. And we have your email. Am I correct when you signed up?
Yes, you have my email.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you.
Okay, Antoinette, our next speaker is Kiana Washington, and I'm let her in the waiting room. I let her in the room from the waiting room. Thanks.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Hello, Mrs. Washington. Thank you for being with us. Like I reminded the previous speaker, just be reminded, we don't allow comments about personnel matters in our public comment. But as soon as you're ready, the clock will start ticking.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I just have a couple of questions in reference to the high school. And once again, unfortunately, someone tested positive with COVID. So I guess my question, I know we didn't close, and I know the superintendent has all rights to keep the building open or closed. But what I'm hearing is that there are like 3 different classes that have to be covered, and they're going into the cafeteria. And my concern is that it's cross contamination. And I'm thinking about the safe and health of the teachers and the students. So I'm just wondering, not why we're not closing. I mean, that's the superintendent's discretion. But if the students are in the cafeteria being covered by one teacher, 3 different classes, what education is really going on? And then yesterday I heard there was a group of students in the cafeteria, first and second period, with no instruction because of teacher coverage. And I know it's COVID and I know we have to be flexible, but I just want, that to be brought up and maybe that can be fixed. Number 2, I wanted to know, when will the community be presented with any data, like, because, in reference to our special education department with the state, any iReady data, anything that we can see how we progress from the fall to the winter? And the last thing, I'm very concerned about there not being any AP Bio or AP Environmental courses being given at Woodlands High School. I believe that our students should have exposure to all sciences, and I'm hoping that we can actually bring that back to Woodlands High School. Thank you. And I don't expect the superintendent to answer about anything. I just wanted to bring that up for information and for the AP Bio, just for information. And the iReady data at any time. I'm not expecting Dr. Reynolds to say anything about that right now, but those are things that if we can have them come in the future, that would be great. And that's really it for tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Washington.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
Have a good
that.
night.
Good night. Dr. Reynolds and Dr. Chase, I assume you got those questions or points of request for information for a later time.
Ms. Washington seems to have a lot of information about Woodlands Middle High School. So we were very appreciative of hearing all the things she heard about it. We'll verify it to see if it's accurate, and we'll provide a response as soon as we can verify or dispel the rumor. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more, Tracy, I think.
Yeah, so the last speaker of the night is the PTA Council President, Pamela Davis. I just let her in. She should be here soon.
Hello, Pam. Welcome. How are you?
Oh, I'm well. How are you?
We're good. Good.
Yes, hi, everyone. I'm just to make sure that
Okay, you muted yourself by accident. Yes. Okay, so you're unmuted now. Just a reminder, no personnel items.
Yep.
During our public comments. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Good evening, everyone. I'm calling because I was listening to some of the committee meetings. One of them was the facilities meeting that I wasn't able to sit in because they don't allow you to contact through YouTube. But I did hear of a plan, and I was listening about possibly adding ECP classrooms onto Lee F. Jackson in the near future. And as excited as I am about that possibility of that long overdue consolidation in the near future, I'm asking the board to plan long-term and not just for one school consolidation, but looking at other facilities. If we are going to do that, does this school building need a different cafeteria? Do they need an auditorium? Do they need to have second grade added onto it? I'd like for us to plan what we're going to look like in 5 to 10 years and not just a Band-Aid. And we need some surgery, regardless of who is at the top. Within the next few years, we're going to have retirements. There's going to be personnel needed to fulfill programs. And I think Ms. Washington alluded to some of the things that are missing. And what about the land? Can the land hold what we need at Lee F. Jackson? What about plans for RJ Bailey? No amount of trees that are going to drown out the 19 super vacs that are going to be running all day long next to that school. Not to mention cars that are going to be parked, sitting, idling, waiting across the street to pull in. The school is no longer desirable, and once the work is complete, we need to look long-term what's happening. Does the high school have room to be able to add 6th grade onto it to make it the middle school? I think we need a well thought out plan in order to execute long term.
Pam, can you
what we're asking our community to pay for? Thank you.
Pam.
Yes.
Okay, so I've been calling you for a few minutes now. There's a good portion of what you said.
Yes, I'm actually on the phone as well.
Okay, maybe you might want to pick the phone.
Mute one of them.
You might want to mute one of them or pick the phone versus, because there's a portion of it that we just, at least for me, I couldn't hear you clearly.
Yes.
So I think
yes, can you hear me?
It's very it's still broken up. I think you left off with
I'm on the phone.
Yeah,
please know that she
I'm on the phone
she's
as
delayed,
well. Let me in.
Hold on, Pam, for 1 second. Hold on.
I'm on.
Wait, Pam, just hold on for 1 second. Hold on for a second. Dr. Reynolds, what were you saying? I didn't catch what you were saying.
I said that she is delayed. She's not hearing us in real time.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna let her in on the phone.
Okay.
So she speaks on the phone. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. There's a phone number here. So let's let that one in, and then maybe she can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Miss Davis? Miss Davis?
Yes. Can you hear me on the phone?
Can you?
Yeah,
Can
you just
hear me
have.
on the phone?
Can you?
You just had.
Can you hear me on the phone?
Pam, do you still have 2 things open? I think you should choose one, choose the phone if that's where you're at, and then end the video. Okay?
Okay.
But choose the phone and end the video.
I just ended the video. Am I okay now?
Yes.
Yes. And also,
I'm
I believe,
sorry.
no problem. Hold on. Also, I think one of the last meetings we were in, Ashley had a suggestion that, and I don't know now if it matters because we're on the phone. If we do hear that, if most of us turn off our cameras, it might help with that. So just to be reminded
Yes,
by that.
I did do that. What I just experienced, I just want to share, that's what students are experiencing. Listening, I at least have a phone to be able to look at the program. When they don't have information or they're having frozen screens, this is what they're experiencing. So I know it's frustrating, but now you can see what they're experiencing.
I understand. So I think the last part that I remember leaving off, and I think it makes you go back just a little bit, when you said that you wanted us to think about like long-term planning.
Yes, and I'm up above that. So then you didn't hear my part about what I heard at the facilities meeting. That I looked at the YouTube facilities meeting. Did you hear that?
I heard that you said ECP. You heard about ECP classrooms being added on as an addition.
Possibly.
And then you said again you wanted us to. You're asking for us to plan long term, and that's kind of where else I sort of stopped hearing you clearly.
Okay, all right. If you allow me to finish, it's only like another minute then. I mean, I can go back and repeat what I said. I talked about asking the board to plan long-term, not just one school consolidation, but looking at all of our facilities. I've also asked for what we would look like in 5 and 10 years, and no matter who's at the top. I've asked within the next few years, there are going to be retirements. We'll need to add personnel. We'll need to fulfill programs from pre-K to 12. I've asked, what about second grade going to Lee F. Jackson? Can the land handle it? Will the building need to have an auditorium, special arts, music, outdoor classrooms? What about the long-term plans for R.J. Bailey? It is no longer a desirable school as the 19 super vacs are going to be going all day long while the kids are there. The students are in class. The parking to get into the super vac is going to have to back up into McLean Avenue, not to mention the traffic that's going to cause. So it doesn't make the school location desirable. And once we make it COVID safe, at that point, we've got to plan forward. What does the high school look like? Can there be enough room for 6th grade? We need a well thought out plan, not just a Band-Aid. That was my spiel. And I'm done. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Pam. Believe I got most of those things. You might find some of them may be answered in regards to David's committee report in regards to some of the ECP things or some of the addition things. But I do agree, and I think we all agree that we do need to have a longer range of years in planning how we're going to address not just our facilities, but academics as well. Anyone else can surely chime in on that. But yeah, I think we'd have to, I would say that I know you're definitely going to stay and listen to the facilities report. And I'll forward, any, other questions in regards to specific curriculum and those things. Well, we have Dr. Chase and Dr. Reynolds on, and they can surely follow up as well.
Absolutely. Good. I'm looking forward to attending the education and wellness meetings. I don't know when the next ones are scheduled. So I don't want to bring information up here unless I've gone and spoken at the committee meetings. I think it's just too much to be able to bring it up at a general board meeting or work session right now.
All right. Thank you so much, Pam.
Sure. Thank you. Okay. I'll look at you on YouTube. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good evening.
Take care.
You too. Okay, Tracy, anyone else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, so next up, we're going to do the committee reports. David?
Sure, you want to do the finance and facilities? You want to do the audit committee first?
I mean,
All right, audit committee.
your choice.
Fine, we'll get the audit committee off the plate. Okay, the GCSD audit committee met on 2/24/21 at 6 p.m. via Zoom call. Attendees included Laser Alert, Amy Ashley Moore, Tanya Dragic, Chris Lazari, Steve Lewis, Michael Owens, Lisa Raymond, David Warner, Terry Williams. We, 1, adopted the 12/7 and 1/25 audit committee meeting minutes. 2, we reviewed our 2020 independent audit management letter and corrective action plan. 3, we reviewed our 2020 internal auditor's risk assessment. And finally, we discussed deep dive areas of concentration for our internal auditor to consider for this year's audit. That is, we would make a recommendation to the board on that. Lisa Raymond proposed a combination of payroll, HR, and benefits. Chris Lazari and David Warner agreed. Michael Owens and Terry Williams thought we should do buildings and grounds, and Tanya Dragic broke the tie by saying we should do a little both. So that's going to be negotiated out with Tobin and Company. We'll bring a recommendation back to you. We'll schedule our next meeting for the end of April when our internal auditor, Tobin and Company, will present last year's 2020 deep dive on grants and aid and the 2021 internal risk assessment. And then this year's deep dive will follow on after that, after we figure out what we're doing. The audit committee recommends that the Board of Education adopt the corrective action plan submitted in response to the independent audit conducted by O'Connor Davies LLP for the year ending June 30th, 2020. That's board agenda item D5. We recommend you do that. The audit committee recommends that the Board of Education accept the internal audit for the year ended 2020 as conducted by Tobin and Company. That's Board of Education agenda item D6. That's the audit committee report. Any questions? You have a soft copy of that, and board members have access to all the documents that we reviewed if you want to go in depth into it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Finance and Facilities Committee. At this point, you should let Jim Wadig and Lee in. Jason Lee.
Okay.
Connecting the audio. And there's Mike Falcone.
That's Mike there.
That's good. That's good. Jim, can you hear us? You're muted.
Yes, I hear you.
Good, good. All right. So I'm going to start off with my normal report of the last 2 meetings. It's about a page worth of stuff. When I get done, I'll introduce you, and you can go into the depth and details of the different phases of the plan. And then when we get done with that, we'll hear briefly from Lisa, who tell us how we'll pay for this, at least the first phase of it. And then we'll go for a question and answer from the board. You're not expected to do anything in terms of our recommendations tonight, but we may consider doing something at the regular board meeting on the 16th, and we may have to have some public hearing stuff involved in that. So here we go. The Finance and Facilities Committee has met twice since the last regular Board of Education meeting on 1/28/21 and again on 2/26/21. Topics included: 1, budget development, moving from a 3% to a 2% tax levy. 2, concerns with the governor's state aid proposal and recommendation for a letter writing campaign to our state legislators. Dr. Chase has since provided a draft of that. I will forward that to everybody. 3, moving excess unallocated fund balance to the repair reserve fund. That's a proposition 1 like we did last year. 4, funding for upcoming facilities projects. 5, the current status of our facilities, including elementary school playground equipment orders, and RJ Bailey masonry work, roof patches, fencing, and landscape restoration. I think Pam was mentioning the business with the trees and whether we should have a hedge. 6, pending projects like the Woodland Security Vestibule and the administration building roof. 7, facilities needs proposals with BBS architects. This included phase 1 project list, which includes RJ Bailey and ECP ventilation, something that we need in order to get back to full-time in-person instruction if we're aiming for that next fall. Phase 2 list, which includes the bulk of the Highview roof repair. District-wide energy performance contract, which pays for itself. An additional set of high priority repairs. And finally, ECP wing options for Lee F. Jackson or possibly the ECP main building. 8, facilities requirements for a return to full-time in-person instruction, including temporary ventilation, heating, and electrical fixes at the ECP main building. And that's probably the most urgent thing since that's the shortest time frame. Per the board's request, we have provided minutes for both meetings, access to the proposals reviewed by the committee on Google Docs, and BBS architects are here to present the latest version of our facilities recommendations. We have sufficient funds to complete phase 1 of our facilities recommendations without going to bond this year, no bond. And the energy performance contract is self-funding. We need to determine costs and time frame for the ECP main building temporary fixes. We recommend 1, the Board of Education review phase 1, seek public input, and make a decision as to whether to adopt phase 1 at the March 16th board meeting. And 2, we recommend the board request proposals for an energy performance contract. The Finance and Facilities Committee will conduct surveys and gather public feedback on phase 2 and beyond, which will likely require a bond. BBS architects are working with our staff to determine cost and time frame for full-time in-person instruction. Jim Wadig of BBS, we just welcomed, will provide you with information on our recommendations, and Interim Assistant Superintendent for Business Lisa Raymond will provide information on how we can pay for them. And with that, we go to the proposal. Take it away, Jim Wadig. If you need to share your screen, we could set that up with Laser.
Yeah, that would be helpful, Laser. If you can grant me that permission, I can bring up some of the stuff we've been studying during our Finance and Facility Committee meetings. All right. So good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. As David mentioned, we've been meeting over the course of a past 2 months to review many items of interest for the school district relative to improving the facilities infrastructure needs. A lot of this work stems from the building condition survey, which BBS conducted for the district in conjunction with state mandate requirements for 5-year reporting on the building's facilities and their condition. So we went in depth to each of the buildings and generated our report, and findings were presented as far as work related to building envelope, mechanical systems, electrical systems, life safety, pretty much everything you can think of to make sure that the environment in which the students are currently learning in is up to code and safe for everybody. So the result of our report, they asked, what we can look at doing of all the items that we had totaling somewhere close to, I don't have that number in front of me,
$89 million.
Close to 40 million.
Okay.
39
30 million was the priority one.
So we broke a lot of the work out into various priorities. But ultimately we were asked to come back with a initial phase of work that could be generated and started utilizing current money that would be available from the district. And so we went back and looked at the reports and tried to extrapolate the most critical items in the reports that were related to the in-school environment, the air and air quality, as well as the building envelope. And that would be roofing, masonry, any of those things that would be something that would be very important to maintain and keep up with. So we generated a list of work, and what's being shared here now is a synopsis in dollar value of the items that we were able to uncover or to look at. And the way the project for this phase one sets up is that there's categories for architectural work, and under that category would be building envelopes, stuff, interior things related to doors, life safety issues, that sort of thing. And then there's a category called MEP, which stands for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing category, and that would be basically everything that we would find in the heating and ventilation systems, the lighting, power for the buildings. And then for the plumbing portion, that would be things relative to sanitary items like plumbing fixtures, toilets, sinks, that sort of thing. And then we came up with a total of those two categories, and that's what we have in the totals category column. The column to the far right on your screen is labeled EPC, and that stands for Energy Performance Contract. So under that category, a lot of those items were targeted or identified that could be categorized into the bulk of work that would be done through the energy performance contract. And it entails a lot of mechanical equipment systems, controls, lighting, that sort of thing that a EPC company would take on, and there would be significant savings in the utilization of how much the energy is being consumed in the buildings now, the way they currently stand. So that category is its own column, and that what David mentioned is the EPC, that one of the items of work that we look for the board to ultimately consider approving to move forward with. That column of work just by itself for each of the buildings where work would be done totals $3.7 million. And that's separate from the capital work and separate from the capital reserve money that's being utilized in the capital projects, which is everything to the left of the EPC column. So in terms of work at each of the buildings, it was kind of selected based on highest priority in terms of what we felt were really important items to address. Some of them would be state regulated to be addressed, in that when we submit a set of plans to the state education department, there is a form that we fill out that goes up and it identifies existing conditions in the building, and it's called the evaluation of existing building form. In that, there's about 75 lines of things that we need to check off and say, is this in conformance currently with building code, or is it non-conforming? If it's conforming, we check yes and we move on. If we check non-conforming, we need to generate a letter at the end of the report that gets attached, and for each non-conformance, we have to explain how it's being addressed in the current project or in an immediate future project. But the state education department looks at that list and says, if there's a non-conformance, we're not going to allow you to perform work in an auditorium to replace seating or carpets if there's issues with your mechanical system. So there's a bunch of items that we had to look at in our EPC that we would say, we know this is going to be a red flag for the state. We need to address it right up front before we consider getting into a phase two and a phase three and so on and so forth of work. So I would say 40 to 50% of the items in the total dollar value that we've identified here would be things that the state education department would be considered needing to be in conformance. And then everything else were potentially items that were discussed that would be of significant benefit to the occupants of the buildings in terms of health, the health and safety and their well-being and ventilation and heating and cooling. So for architecturally, the way the categories break out, I don't know if anybody in the board has seen the building condition survey, but when we break out the items, I'm just bringing up the administration building as an example for now. We categorized phases and work scope through highlighting areas that we said, okay, anything that's highlighted in a blue color is going to be done in phase 2. So you can see here we had issues with some trees contacting electrical lines. That would be a phase 2 item. We had a retaining wall that's in very bad shape at the admin building. That would be a phase 2 item. Some steel beams in the basement, considered to phase 2. A lot of those became phase 2 because there's nothing really happening in that building as far as the ECP going back in there. So, we figured we're going to, address the most critical items at the schools where the children are currently occupying. So we wanted to highlight and identify for each building in, color coding, phase 1 being yellow, phase 2 being blue, the work that was identified. So you'll see things that aren't highlighted. These are all the items that were in our BCS study, but then we only cherry picked out the ones that were the most critical. And then you can see the associated dollar amounts associated with providing mechanical ventilation, assuming that there were 10 rooms that needed to be done, it's $500,000 worth of work that would happen for that item. So as we went through each building, we found the items that were critical and started extrapolating those out and putting them into our form to come up with a total dollar amount. The other limitation that we had on the phase 1 work was that we had to stay within 5 million plus a little bit. So that kind of had another consideration in terms of what we could really afford to do without going fully overboard. So we had to do significant amount of due diligence to determine what was a real mandatory item, discuss it with the board, explain to them what each of these categories really meant and how they would affect future work. This would be Lee F. Jackson. Again, the categories, and green is items that we would say go into the energy performance contract. So scanning through, we had a couple of green items here. So insulate exposed areas of breaching. That's where a chimney, a boiler system gets tied into a chimney. It may be uninsulated, so it's losing heat. Insulate, there's bare piping in the boiler room, so any of that steam piping is losing its heat before it gets to its source. So those sort of things you spend money on that if it's not addressed. And then when we came through each of the buildings, we looked at pretty much everything that could be done. And there were only 2 of the schools that we felt were really critical in terms of work that needed to be done on the roof and on the exterior of the building. Woodlands being one of the schools, we had identified close to $4 million worth of work that wouldn't be necessary to be done there when you look at the entire roof system. But knowing that would have, taken all the money that we had available to do other work, we figured we'd do a fair chunk of it, and we would try to take out maybe $450,000 and do it in piecemeal, which we can do. We could break up a roof into sections, but at least it covers some of the worst areas. And then we just kind of, made sure we took the most critical items and brought them over into the report, brought them over into our phasing, and then came up with numbers. So at the high school, middle school, we'd be looking at spending $115,000 in architectural work. I believe this entails mostly some windows that are non-compliant due to fire code. They need to be rated assembly. A lot of the MEP work in here has to do with some of the exhaust fans that need to be done and mechanical systems. High view, I think this is all roof work that we figured would be roof work, some interior glazing by the gymnasium needs to be replaced. Mechanical, a little less because a lot of work has been done there or is currently being done. So there wasn't a lot more that would be necessary. So that number is quite low. You can see Bailey is the biggest at 3 million because the mechanical system there is really not functioning to the current standards or to standards that they should be to give a fresh and good air environment.
So that's replacing all of the fans that we put in the windows?
Yes, that would be taking out what is currently what they call a unit ventilator. Basically what that does is it brings fresh air in from the outside. It runs it through some coils to kind of preheat it, and then it brings it into the building. Right now, those units aren't working. They can't get parts for them. It's time that they get replaced with new units. Right now, the window fans are doing that, bringing the air in, but they're not providing any heating to kind of bring that 20-degree outdoor air is just coming straight into the room, whereas a unit ventilator does the same thing, but it heats it before it disperses it into the room. So there's a significant amount of work to be done to do that, and that's why that number is so high. It's a fairly decent sized building. Other buildings, teachers center, transportation, no work needed to be done there. Again, no students are in those buildings. There are items that we definitely want to address in due time, but immediately not critical. The administration building, I think mechanical wise, there was some plumbing fixtures and some small necessary items electrically that needed to be addressed. And then the other number here for the early childhood, this would be for providing the required fresh air for that building if it was going to have students reoccupy the early childhood program spaces that are currently there. We would still need to investigate whether or not the building itself could keep up with heating requirements, because right now it's struggling to maintain temperature with the way that things need to be operated, with windows being partially open and such. So there's a little more investigative work that's going to be necessary that we're currently undertaking, and we should be able to report something back March 11th, I believe, or be prior, with information that we've gathered as to what would need to be done if we needed to increase electric consumption or electric supply for providing unit heaters or things of that nature.
So backing up just a minute. So you're talking to me about the temporary fixes for ECP that are required because phase one will take too long to complete. Is that correct?
Right.
So
right.
How long will phase one take to complete?
So phase one, once we get our approval to proceed, we would consider that, we have a total of $5 million of work to be done. So it's sizable. It's touching a lot of buildings, a lot of areas we got to get into and look at. This was the breakdown of mechanical work, 4.1 million. Architectural is insignificant compared, but it's still amount of work that needs to be investigated. So where we are today, if we were to consider, kind of the start of design work would be around mid-April. That would give us, we'd need about a 1 month time frame to go in and do our field work, to start doing roof cores, testing things, investigating what the real problems are. Because during our BCS, our building condition study walkthrough, we literally have 4 hours to look at an entire building, and that doesn't give us nearly enough time to really get into the nuts and bolts of why something might not be working. We know it's not working. We know it needs to be replaced. We can associate a dollar value with it and cover all the anomalies that may be associated with that. But there's still work that we need to go in and make sure we're tying into systems in a proper way. So we have field work that's going to be really critical for us. Once we get our field work done, we have some meetings with the school district to make sure we're on the same page. That takes about 3 months of time to get documents prepared and ready, paperwork to get submitted with the drawings. So that puts us May, June, July, August. So that puts you in middle of August. Now we get the plans submitted by the time we get all the paperwork ready by end of August. The state has their review period. Right now they're at 8 weeks, so that's about 2 months of time, puts us into October. And then we give ourselves about a month or so or less to prepare the construction documents. We'll need, contracts from your attorney to be incorporated into those documents. Those things we'll be, working on as we start our design process. But ultimately, it takes a while just to get all that stuff compiled. And also, we'll have a period of time where we have to address the state's comments through an addendum, and that takes a week or so. So if they have 2 months to review, we give ourselves about 2 weeks to get the paperwork back to them that they want answers so they can give us a permit. So if that puts us into November, then we're looking to issue plans for bid in early December. We give it a 1 month bid period. Review contracts takes about a month, so it's January of next year. So we're looking at ultimately getting contracts awarded, starting construction in March 2022 of, pretty much a year from now, everything start to finish throughout the process with reviews and all those things that go along with it.
And then how long will construction take?
Construction for these projects, I see it happening in the course of a summer if we get it, early, starting in June, like when the buildings are empty, when the work can actually start. But awarding the contract in March, we start getting the shop drawings in place. They can place orders for the equipment. So it should only take, June, July, August to be done for most of this work. The roof work, it'll be done. The buildings will be watertight. There'll be some other hang-on work, which will linger into October, but that's usually the finished details that typically, take a little bit longer, but the buildings will be watertight, occupiable, no interruptions to the school environment with work that will be ongoing, because that would be scheduled after school hours, for, a month or so.
Thank you.
So as far as our projects go, that was our phase one was our real focus on trying to come up with a good game plan for all that work. And then there was consideration of, okay, well, what would we do in considering a secondary group of work, which would be categorized in phase two. So same sort of approach. What didn't make it into phase one, we made sure we picked it up in phase two as the next most critical items, and went through the BCS lists, and we highlighted our items in blue for all the work that was going to be necessary. And we started bringing over the work and tabulating it to come up with a total. For all this work, we're looking at about $3.6 million. That leaves about 1.3 on the table if you wanted to, keep it to that $5 million. So there's about another 1.3 million we could look at to make up if we wanted to get to that number. We would very easily be able to find a additional area of work in roof replacement. I would recommend at the high school to, maybe bring that total up a little bit to closer to maybe 1.8 million. That would get a nice chunk of work done there, and that would get you right around $5 million in that phase two. But that'll be, work to still pick up after phase one is complete. And that will be a bond related type work. Everything in phase one is able to be pursued with capital reserve money that's available. Anything in phase two would have to be a bonded projects that would be, public vote, that whole procedure.
Mhm. And what's out beyond phase two?
So then beyond phase two, we would really go back into considering if we wanted to take the remainder of the items in the BCS and continue that process of, $5 million chunks of work, or consider at that point, where the economy is and is it the right environment to take on something larger, maybe $20 million or 15 million or something, whatever's tolerable, to try to pick up a larger piece of the work that needs to be done, instead of, dragging it out over the course of maybe 6 years. Maybe it can get done in 2 or 3 after this initial work is done. So that would be a discussion, obviously, with the Finance and Facilities Committee to, game plan those two strategies, looking at a $5 million a year work forward, and a 20 million to see, or 20 million, 10 million, something of that size to consider. And that's just work related to the BCS. And then there was discussions that we've had regarding the early childhood program and adding space at Lee Jackson.
Would you discuss that?
We did discuss that. We have we presented plans of and costs for what that would all entail and how that would possibly look. Had some input from the director of that program to kind of, we were out at 8 classrooms, and no, we can do it with 4 or 5. So we were able to come back on our number. And then there was good input from the committee as far as, well, what if we're going to be embarking on a $500,000 project there through phase one, wouldn't it make sense to keep the program there and not just spend that money now, but then in a year from now, the classrooms are empty? Could an addition be done, generated to facilitate the students in one building at the early childhood main building? So we did a study on that as well to, see what classroom configuration would work. And that was also a good exercise to see if it's feasible.
Would you like to show us maybe a picture or
Yes.
an estimate?
Yes. So let's look at Lee Jackson. I think it's Greenburgh pre-K. So this is Lee F. Jackson, and existing floor plan is kind of this loosely highlighted area here. And the classroom addition is this whole shaded space. So this is the end of the corridor that's, I think, currently on the end here. There's like a little photocopy room, and there's a breezeway. So that would take that out, and then keeping the doorway there would wrap around to a new corridor, administrative space, nurse's office, and then the classrooms that will be necessary. So we did 2 design options, an A and a B. Design option A, give it a little more space, a little more room in terms of storage. I think maybe nicer accommodations for the staffing needs, and the square footage that we came up with based on the student population and needs for the support was around 11,700 square feet. We base our construction cost for new construction nowadays on roughly $800 a square foot. And that gives us, we can put a number about 9.4 million for this work. That does not include a new playground that will be necessary or might be necessary. So adding that in would come up to about $300,000. So for a full total of 9.7 million for this classroom configuration. And then we would have future consideration for a multi-purpose room. This could be like an indoor play space of some sort. And then if ever classrooms were needed, there'd be room to continue an addition throughout, tying it back to the building. Option B, sticking with the same program of the spatial needs for classrooms, 4 classrooms. We're able to reduce the square footage a little bit by eliminating some of the storage space, consolidating some of the needs of the administrative aspects of the wing into small areas. So we're able to squeeze the program a little bit and get down to about 8,700 square feet, which totaled about $7 million. So there was roughly $1.3 million savings between the two. Adding in the playground, once again, would bring this number to 9.3 compared to 9.7 of the option A. So these were pretty significant exercises to look at in terms of how things would fit, how they would lay out, how it would accommodate all the needs. So that was nice to see that this would, in fact work or could lay out nicely. Again, with future consideration for expansion, and it has a beautiful area out here. This is about where the addition would come off and would wrap around. So it's got some room out here to work with. When we looked at the early childhood main building, we went to childhood center, that's a BCS. And when did I see that here? And then I didn't have this tagged up.
Right there.
I mean, this is the BCS. Why? Let me just check. There we go. Sorry, it was, I'm looking for it named something else. All right, so this is a little more rudimentary of a sketch. It was kind of something we had to put together last week, but the thing to remember is we're working with square footages. So we know things that are labeled here is by number. We know size-wise what they need to be. So we were able to come up with a pretty good number in terms of square footage. So for here, there's existing program spaces, there's existing admin spaces, there's existing support spaces. So a lot of stuff that we were trying to build at Lee F. Jackson are already being utilized at the early childhood building. So we don't need to add that space. We just need to come up with new classrooms, a little bit of additional office space, and some storage perhaps. So square footage by adding is really this blue box here of space that will be added. It would require some demolition. This little red dash thing, whatever is sitting out there now, would need to be removed so we can build these classrooms, so we could have a double loaded corridor and keep all the students basically working in this one area. So we were able to look at the building in terms of what we would need for new square footage, which would be 5,900 square feet. Again, that's just this blue box. And then we have some existing square footage that would be modified or worked on, a little bit to help as far as heating or cooling, if anything needed to be provided. But the total square footage of the program spaces would be 10,400. But we're only building 5,900 new. So just looking at that number, using the cost that we've been using for, being consistent with our cost for the new work, we'd look at a total of 5.7 million to construct this scenario, which would include some demolition of the existing buildings here, a little bit of site work, and all new construction for 4 classrooms and a little bit of support space.
So
We may go in and do some work for making handicap accessible toilets, but that will be the limitation of the capital improvements to the existing ECP.
So it's less expensive, but then you have to worry about transitions from ECP to kindergarten, first grade. So that's a trade-off that we have to decide which direction we would want to go on that.
Right. That would it would bring all the early childhood students to the one building. You wouldn't have them in the admin end in this. Now they're all in one, and now then they would have to move, yes, to their kindergarten program once they move up from here.
Okay. So
David,
yes,
I have a question. Is this kind of an FYI, or are we actually making the recommendation to the board tonight?
The recommendation to the board tonight is phase one, because while we had this discussion, and you can make your pitch if you want to go in the other direction, but we said phase one because we have the money for phase one and we don't know what's happening with the economy. If they stop kicking the can down the road on what happens to people's mortgages who haven't been paid, and that whole housing bubble thing may blow up on us, or it maybe the government will come through and the economy will start coming back, and then everything will be okay, and we can afford a much larger bond. And if we can afford a much larger bond, then this becomes something that we can consider in addition to the stuff that we've already got in phase two. And the question is, how large a bond are we willing to tolerate, and how good is the economy? We don't know yet, because we're just turning the corner on COVID-19. We're just coming out of it. So for right now, it's spend the reserves you've got on repairs primarily and getting students back into full-time in-person instruction. And then phase two, we size that out. We take in a lot of information from the public, and we wait and see what happens to the economy.
Okay, I just actually, so are we voting on the phase one tonight, or?
No, we are answering the board's questions tonight.
Okay.
We're checking with legal to see if we have public hearing requirements further down the line, and then the board will be asked to come back with some kind of decision, we think, at the next board meeting at the earliest, like the 16th.
Okay, so I know that we have a long meeting ahead of us, and so the only thing I just wanted to comment on for the rest of the board to hear, because we had this discussion during our committee meeting, was the part, could you just put that back, your phase one list? Okay, yeah. So the only thing that I think that I would like the board to have a discussion on is the early childhood center ventilation repairs, which are over $500,000. And so I think that the point that I made when we had our committee meeting, and the point that I want to make now again, is that because we are fundamentally strapped for money, spending $500,000 on a building that we may eventually ditch sounds like a waste of money to me. And this work is really not going to be done until the 2022-23 school year. So I would have liked us to consider whether that type of money is better spent on getting, I know we've been around this block many times, but whether it's better spent on getting those mobile classrooms by Lee F. Jackson, while we decide what exactly we're going to do with early childhood, whether we are going to build an addition or whether we are going to perhaps just go back and completely revamp the early childhood center to be our, full ECP. I mean, I don't know. I think this is a discussion to be had, but it just seems to me like a lot of money that we could right now put somewhere else while we really come to a firm decision about what we're in fact doing with ECP. I don't want to just throw $500,000 away. So that was the only point I was going to make tonight. I'm not even going to go into the other stuff right now.
So then the next question is, how long does it take to put the trailers together and how much does it cost? James, how long does it take to put these trailers? We've gone over this a couple of times. How long does it take to put the trailers together?
It's a process like a building addition. We still, the availability of trailers that at one time you can just pick them up from, the yards, contractors turning them in or businesses getting rid of them. They're no longer there, given the need for them through COVID. So what you're buying is basically brand new from a company in Pennsylvania where they need to fabricate and build it and ship it, put it on a foundation, get it hooked up, so it's a similar process to a new building. Takes a little bit shorter once it gets there, but it's, basically, a little bit less than a year to, get it on site, and ready for occupancy. But it goes through the same review process, and the fact that it does need to get fabricated and delivered and shipped and put in place, adds really the time, whereas before that was really negligible. Now it's something that needs to be, factored in. Cost wise, I couldn't really tell you.
How much do they cost?
I'm really not familiar with what those type of units cost now. I will make a note that we can get you that information, but it's not $800 a square foot. It might be 300, it might be 250. I don't want to just throw a number out there and have it stick.
So we're looking at $577,000 here. If what we're doing in the short run is making temporary ventilation fixes and heating and electrical fixes while we're waiting to be able to do this ventilation, as you have described, then there's that cost. But if we get that temporary system in place, then we do have time to play with. As long as we get the kids back to in-person instruction by fall, we have some latitude, right? We have to get the ECP children that are sitting in Highview right now back out of there, because the Highview children are coming back, right? So that's the urgent thing. So once we have a temporary fix, we could talk about whether we want to do something else with this or not, this $577,000 that we've got set aside in phase one. And if you want to go trailers, that's an option, but we need to find out how much it costs and how long it takes.
David?
Yes.
We had attempted that some years ago. If some people remember, there was a trailer sitting on the property of Early Childhood for many years. We called it the Tin Can. We bought it for a classroom, but found out that it was not the type of trailer that we should have had for a classroom. So we bought it. And after we bought it, we found out we couldn't use it as a classroom. Let's put it that way. You have to really know the kinds of trailer you want, because there are so many different types. And the one that we bought, we thought we were buying, for educational purposes, and found out that we couldn't. So we used it as an office. It was cold in the winter and it was hot in the summer, even though we had something that was called air conditioning and heating in there. So you have to, if you rent it, you have to figure out how much monthly it's going to be, not only the rent, but how much the electricity and heating and, water, everything has to be involved in how you decide you're going to use the trailer. And then if you buy it, you have to buy one that's worth standing for at least 15, 20 years, that's got padding and good floors, and it's got good ventilation, good air, good heat. So it can be as expensive as a house, or it can be as cheap as a cheap apartment. I should have said cheap hotel room, but it's up to you how you decide to do it. But make sure you look into it very well before you make a decision about it.
Okay, so there's a call for quality. So when you come back with your estimates, take that into consideration, not just the rock bottom price. Okay,
Well, I think-
Yeah, no,
I
we
think
would-
we did
I think we
something
care-
for Leaf Jackson that was similar to that. We had a trailer. It had a supposedly short life of 5 years, and they kept it for close to 20, and it just kind of disintegrated over time. So I've seen trailers not be the best solution, but that doesn't mean that it can't work.
So I'm
David,
just
Terry
curious.
has-
maybe
hold on for a
buying-
second. Hold on a second. Terry had his hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see him. I'm sorry, I have a limited view.
Thank you.
No problem.
So, David, I guess my question, I got a few questions. And I guess my overarching question is there a recommendation from the committee on how to proceed? Because I'm hearing multiple things.
Mhm. The recommendation on how to proceed in the short term is to complete the phase 1 repairs.
Okay, all right. So I see the phase 1 repairs here. I see the numbers at least. Is there a summary page that details this a little bit better? This is a little bit hard to keep track of, as we listen to the different, phase 1, phase 2, do this, do that. And if we're only thinking about phase 1, I would find it helpful to either have a little bit more detail, certainly a summary page, and then backed up with some more detail. And maybe this is also a question to the gentleman from BBS. Is this report that you created available that you can send out to the board? Because I don't know if I can make a decision tonight because, theoretically, what we've done in the past is, and I'll use the auditors as an example. We get a report ahead of time, we get a chance to look at it and then come with questions. I mean, I can't even ask questions because it's still formulating in my mind because I hear this and that and the other. So I would recommend, or I would suggest a report, a presentation, if you will, a more user-friendly report than just a bunch of figures that we could look at, and then perhaps you come back and then answer our questions. And again, I'm just speaking for myself because I just can't even ask any questions because there's just so much here. Let me also ask you this: by the ECP main building, we're not talking about the mansion, right? We're talking about that building closer to the housing development there. Okay, great. I see you nodding, Dave. So, and my understanding was, and again, just with so much information going back and forth, my understanding was back when we were considering the bond, that those buildings were determined to be, I guess for lack of a better term, not really suitable for children. I mean, it was okay to you. There wasn't any health risk there, but I was left with the impression that the buildings really weren't suitable for children. And I'm saying that to say, why would we build another wing onto that? If my recollection is correct, why would we build another wing onto that?
Okay, I can say this, that we were pushing for consolidation previously. That is, we tend to lose students when they move from building to building, and both for continuity of instruction and to kind of keep people in place and make it the most natural thing for them to stay in place. We were trying to consolidate such that we had multiple grade levels in one building. And above and beyond anything, if you were to choose your site, then Leaf Jackson as a newer building is probably closer to what you want the other classrooms to look like. Thus, one of the reasons for the popularity of the ECP classrooms in Lee F. Jackson is because they're more modern classrooms. So yes, while you might spend a little bit more, it might be better to build things onto Lee F. Jackson than to build things onto ECP. That's one side of the debate.
Okay, so, all right. So I think that kind of answers my question, at least gives me some clarity. So let me just ask one additional question then, and then I'll let some other folks go. So it almost sounds to me as if we are, or maybe the committee is proposing, and again, I'm not quite sure here, are we saying that we're going to do a Lee F. Jackson building project?
Not in phase one.
Not in phase one, okay.
So phase one, we have about $5.1 million between the 2% budget we've got for next year, has a certain amount in it, and we have some reserves right now. We have the repair reserve, and I believe Lisa can go over that very briefly. We have $5.1 million. Phase one gets covered by money we already are going to have based on our budget and what we have in our reserves.
Got
Phase two, we got to go to bond.
Got it.
So
Okay.
phase two's later, phase one's now.
All right, I got it. So look, the last thing I'll say is this. Thank you for the explanation, Dave. You pointed out that Lisa could go into more detail. This is why it's important that this needs to be in a consolidated document so that we could look at it and understand it rather than get peppered from all sides with the information. So, and I say all of that to say, I can't really make a decision tonight on the recommendation until I have all of that in front of me so that I could ask informed questions. So thank you for that, and thank you for this work.
Okay.
David, I had two questions, or I think it might just be one question. Mr. Wadick, you said that there were two schools that are really critical in regards to their roofs. I just wanted to double check. I know you said the Woodlands Middle High School. Was Highview the other one?
Yes, Highview, yes.
And what was the cost on each of those?
So Highview's roof is about 2.5 million to do the entire roof over, which needs to be done.
Okay.
And the high school roof, which is a much bigger building and a lot more complicated in its levels, the total number that we're looking for work needing to be done would be 4.3 million, or closer to 4.4 million.
And with that one, with the Woodlands Middle High School, you said that that would sort of be like section by section. Do you know how many sections that would, like how many phases, I guess, of doing each section?
You know, initially, if we were looking at in phase two, like $450,000, you know, we're probably looking, you know, at a roof area of about, I don't know, maybe 50,000 square feet, 25 to 50,000 square feet. You know, we'd have to look at what area that would fit within. Not sure how many we would like, you know, how many we would break it up to, but we've, you know, in buildings where you have multiple levels of roof, you can easily isolate one area, work on that without, you know, affecting other areas, you know, and then come back, you know, a year or so later and you do another area. So we have to look at the overall plan and say, okay, where does it make sense to kind of make a cutoff line, and then of the 4.4 million, kind of, okay, this roof area is going to cost 1.5. This roof area is going to cost 800,000. This roof area, the more you break it up that way, it gets more expensive, because if you do the entire roof, you know, the contractor's got more value in doing that and his profit versus coming back and doing smaller areas. So the numbers might not be reflected if you were, you know, comparing 18 different roof areas to one big roof area. The numbers wouldn't match up if you added each of those 18 individually versus the one overall. There'd be a significant savings in the overall project.
So the 4.4 is if you did it in one swoop, and then if you don't do it and you break it up, it would be more for the 4. It would be over 4.4.
it would tend to get more, yeah. So as we get into later phases where we can do more roof areas, we would, get closer to that 4.4 million. But initially, if we were gonna do it in smaller 50,000 roof set, square foot sections, it would eventually exceed, I would say, the 4.4 million.
Okay, and David, you said tonight we're just listening and we'll make a decision, not tonight, but you said possibly for the 16th, right?
Right. So we need to get you perhaps a consolidated version of the, you could take everything in phase one, for example, all the yellow highlighted stuff and consolidate it together so you can see everything that's in phase one right next to itself instead of drilling down through, 6
Pages
different
and
documents.
Yeah.
Right? That won't take a huge amount of labor. And that will probably perhaps clarify what goes in phase one. Lisa, did you want to briefly show us?
David, before we go that far, can I just jump in? I just want to
Sure, go ahead,
highlight
Ashley.
something real quick. So
Sure.
just to make sure everyone's on the same page, because it is a lot of information, what the committee's recommendation is that we consider phase one, including the EPC work, right? The EPC work would be self-funded, so we're not going into our coffers theoretically for that. We're only going into our coffers for the 5.135. And then the second thing to mention that make sure it's clear, I think David hit the nail on the head. I think if we come up with the list of just the yellow highlighted items and we put that into a package, this is phase one, that'll be clear. The phase two work is the next set of essentials that we believe are necessary, but we haven't come to an agreement yet on phase two or anything after that. So that's still conversations happening. So what we need to focus on right now as a board really is phase one, including the EPC. That's what we're kind of thinking of potentially for the next meeting, discussing further. Thank you.
Can I just jump in for a sec, Antoinette, before we go to Lisa? So yeah, so I just want to go back to, because I think that this is really, the kind of segues back to what Terry was saying. And what I was trying to say is that if we're not going to fundamentally keep the early childhood center as the early childhood center, then putting $500,000 into it is a waste of money, basically, and would be better spent perhaps getting those trailers, setting them up, and that would give us a lot more flexibility than to sort of pace ourselves down the line. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Carey?
Yeah, I just want to find out if they decide to build on to the F. Jackson School. Number one, how many classes would go there? And how much of the recreational space will it take, i.e. playgrounds and areas to run, if they decide to go that way? I think it's important that we also know that we are trying to, I don't know if we're trying to build a playground there in the future for the early childhood program, but it would be kind of senseless to build a playground if you're deciding that, if the board decides that they want to enlarge Lee F. Jackson to house the early childhood program. So I think we need to know how much space will be left when and if additional classrooms are added on to Lee F. Jackson. And that's my only request.
Okay, I think Lisa.
The schedule I sent. Oh.
Yeah. Are you able to share that?
You're muted, Lisa.
Do you want me to share my screen or do you have it?
No, I want you to share your screen, please.
Okay, am I able to share my screen? Let's see what happens here.
I sent you that list.
Yeah, I'm trying. There, can you see it?
There, yep, there you go. So currently we have in the repair reserve $1,159,000 $1,277 that would be available to be spent. In the capital fund, available would be $2,794,592, and with the 2021-22 anticipated contribution to the capital fund of 1.3 million, there's a potential to have $5,253,869 of funds available.
So $5.1 million project, $5.2 million available.
Correct.
I think Trustee Williams has his hand up.
No, I'm sorry, that was from before. I'll take it down.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we have our marching orders. Are there other questions? Let me stop my share.
Mr. Warner, I have a question for
Yes.
Jim. I was just wondering, just based on what I know about the condition of the mansion, I know that Jim is in the process of submitting a variety of reports. He indicated that there was a 75-point form that is sent to the state, and I noticed that the mansion has been deemed satisfactory in the variety of categories, I think overall, and if I'm wrong, Jim, please correct me. I just want to know, how did we come to the conclusion that the mansion is satisfactory when I have other contradictory reports indicating that it's not? I have reports that indicate that people should not occupy the mansion. Perhaps there's something I'm missing, and if you can just enlighten me, that would be really helpful. And I'm asking because there's a lot of anxieties from those of us who came from the mansion about the status of the mansion, and because we had to move. And so if you can just enlighten me as to how you arrived at satisfactory when I have reports indicating otherwise.
So the BCS report, that's the only place where it would indicate whether the building was satisfactory or non-satisfactory. We went through the items that were indicated there, looked at the, we've been involved over there with the areas that were issues with some air quality stuff that we looked at. There was some testing done. There was some structural issues. We looked at those things. The building itself, is certain areas that maybe shouldn't be occupied, but overall there's spaces within that can be utilized. It can be, it's satisfactory. It's not falling down. It's not a significant health risk, but there's work that needs to be done to it. In the paperwork that was submitted to the state so that we can get the roofing project done, I mentioned early on in my monologue that there was items of 75 things that need to be identified. If any of them are checked non-conformance, you need to provide a letter that says what the non-conformance is and what's being done. So we did identify 2 or 3 items, I forget what we had, that we needed to go back and explain what was being done. And some of it had to do with dealing with the indoor air quality issues, because we are taking out a significant amount of plaster that may be water damaged. We are in that project dealing with the roof leaks and those sort of things. So that'll prevent water from getting into the building. So those sort of things are being addressed. There was a little bit of work relative to exiting requirements and stuff for safe passage that was being addressed as well. So we had to identify certain things that were non-conforming and bring it to the attention of the state, and they looked at it and said, as long as it's being taken care of in this project, we will issue the permit to construct. So that's how that was handled. As far as the satisfactory conclusion that we came to in the BCS, under our looking at everything that was in front of us, we did identify some things that need to be replaced, but a lot of the work, a lot of the things in place now are pre-existing non-conforming. So we've mentioned this several times, that the building, the way it exists, meets current code because you haven't really done anything major in terms of renovations there. The minute you go in and you start adding space or modifying things significantly, you're going to need to bring things up to current code, which would be for the ventilation system, which leads to your point of safe environment interior.
Phase 2.
It's the way it is now, but under phase 2, we would bring it up to code on that. So under the way the building is looked at by the state, it is satisfactory because it meets the code from which it fell under prior to 2021 or what, 2022. So it is a building that, meets the criteria, but we don't think that it should be left to stay that way just because they say it's okay. I think we've always talked about the need to do mechanical work there. That's why there is a significant amount of work in the BCS identified for that building. If there was nothing to be done, then that would be a different question. But we have identified a lot of work that needs to be done specifically mechanically, structurally, brickwork, the retaining wall, all that stuff is in there that needs to be done. It still doesn't disappear if it doesn't get done. It's still there. So it's been identified, the state's aware of it. But in our recommendation, the building itself is, once we address a few of the issues that we're currently looking at, would be satisfactory.
Is everything for that coated in orange?
Do I have it up here?
So while you're looking at that, Jim, let me ask you a question, because I know you and I were going back and forth on the AVI, right? So, right, did you guys conduct the AVI? Did BBS do the walkthrough of the AVI in December?
That walkthrough was done by a fire marshal. He has the credentials to do the AVI.
Right.
What we do is we backfeed his report with what we found in the building condition survey. So
okay.
we were, in conjunction with his report, we took his information and we kind of melded the two reports together.
Do you remember, or do you have offhand what his report said about the occupancy of the mansion in December and how it should be used?
I do not have that information. That I would have to find where that got.
Because I just want the board just to be aware. We've been bringing issues about the various buildings, the mansion included, because we had to vacate it. And I just want the board to be aware of the fact that there are a variety of engineers who have been in the building, who have made an assessment. And these engineers are independent of the district and independent of BBS, from what I'm made to understand. In fact, I'm made to understand that BBS actually contracted these engineers to do this work. And I just want to make sure that all of the reports that we have speak the same language. I just have concerns because, people are watching our meetings, and, I'm getting text messages from individuals who have some concerns about the quality and making sure that, we're all making the right decisions in terms of moving people back into the buildings.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Carey?
Yeah, I just want to know, maybe I should ask this of David. David, have you got any information from any other developers, engineers that's contradictory?
I just have the EnviroScience recommendations from all that testing we did before, and that's where we came up with recommendations saying, do not reoccupy the mansion until you install mechanical ventilation.
Okay,
so notice phase 1, we are not moving people from the high school back into the administration building. Phase 1, we're spending money that we have on the highest priority repairs that we've got. I'm a proponent of putting in the mechanical ventilation as part of phase 2, bonding it, and then that will free up space in the high school again, and that benefits the students. And it also makes whoever goes to the mansion safe because we'll have mechanical ventilation at that point. That's my position.
I just wanted to be sure.
Phase 2. Okay.
I just wanted to be sure that there was other documentation that said something to the effect that the mansion was uninhabitable, because it appears that this goes back every time we talk about the mansion. There were a whole lot of other engineers or whatever saying that it's not inhabitable, but they give us no documentation. So I would like that documentation, if indeed there are those out there, whether they're independent or not, saying that the mansion is not, inhabitable for human beings. Because we're paying people who are going out there saying it is, and now we have people somewhere out there saying it's not. So I would just like to get that in writing so I can see it also.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Carey. I have a question for clarity. So maybe, listen, we've been on this committee report for a while, but I do have a question on Mr. Waydick. I guess what I'm curious about is the other, for lack of a better word, the vendors that are also have their reports, some of the reports that Dr. Chase referenced. Do you communicate with each other? Are you getting their information? Like, is there a relationship together? I'm just trying to figure out, is this two different things, or are you aware of these other reports? And if so, I guess when were you aware? I'm just trying to figure out, is there a connection in some way of information sharing?
Yes, I have every report that was done prior to our involvement. We've looked at those reports, and all the information that was in that was relative to a partial ceiling collapse that was determined to be the major issue with other ceilings within the building that needed to be addressed. That was the main concern. That was the main problem. We did look at that report. We went back out. We did our walkthrough. We found the areas that they identified. It wasn't any real mystery to go in and do some real sleuth work to see what the problems were. And, we definitely looked into what was, their report information, what they documented, and we took that into consideration when we were generating our report, which we presented last April or March around this time, I think. So we did report back to the board saying, we looked at the document, we went through the building, we did find certain things. The district has taken measures to remove, the worst case areas. However, there's still areas in the building that need to be addressed, specifically the plaster ceiling over the EPC room, ECP rooms, which is being incorporated into the work that we were doing with the roof project, and other areas where there was plaster damage that was, a problem with potential mold. That's why the air quality report was done. So, that didn't show any major levels of contamination. There were things found that were relative to compounds that were stored in the building that, had some off-gassing that needed to be removed, which that's been addressed. So yeah, the reports are there. We've read the reports. We understand what's in those reports, and we've looked at the building and we've found the areas that are problematic, and those are either finding their way into the BCS, or they were critical enough that they would make their way into, the first scope of work that's, is being done.
I can see Michael Falcone has his hand up.
Yeah, because I don't know how to raise that hand.
I saw
Everybody
Terry's
else
as well. Just
The reaction.
So what I'm understanding, because we do have two engineer reports, and both of them did say that they were unsafe. Okay, nobody can deny that. And actually, BBS said his engineer report. CS Arch had their engineer report. The building's unsafe as is, and I think is what Jim keeps on saying. Things have to be addressed before we enter the building. I mean, I have to say, I was with the AVI person in the administration building, and even he said this is unsafe to be in there. So I don't think anybody's denying. I don't think anybody out there should deny when you have three professionals saying it's unsafe. It's unsafe, but I know Jim keeps on saying things have to be addressed. So I think the amount of money that Jim is saying in order for somebody to be, go in there is something like $5 million before anybody can go in there, or $6 million. And I hope the board understands it's not that little bit of money that he's saying at the very beginning, the roof. There's a lot of things that need to be done. You're going to spend $5-6 million in that building before you occupy it. So it's a big nut. It's a big price. So I just wanted to make that clear, that we have three professionals that say we should not be in that building.
Michael, didn't you get something from the state education department as well?
Yeah, state ed told me that we need to do something about that, the buildings, actually all of our buildings. They've heard that it's in bad conditions through the fire department. Okay, for our fire reports that we're trying, that we go ahead and fix to have it, our buildings safe for the kids, but they themselves says the administration building is a hazardous, very hazardous. So that's, the fire department told the educational department how bad conditions that building is in. So now I have actually, 4 professionals. And the state ed called me up about that.
Thank you, Mr. Falcone. Tracy? Tracy?
She doesn't look muted.
Yeah, I don't.
Wait, now she's muted.
Tracy? Okay, Ashley?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make one thing clear, just because there's a lot of information that's been passed around today. Is a lot of information we've all been discussing, right? I just want to reiterate, no one has said anything about occupying the mansion in phase 1. No one has said when that will happen in a future date, because I think all of us on this call here understand the condition of the building as it is today. And we all understand that things need to be done to that building before that can happen. So I just want to make sure that's clear to our community, because we had so much information thrown out there, it may be confusing at this point. No one has said we're doing that. So that's it.
Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate that.
At the same time, I think it's clear that this building is not exactly a death trap, and that we got the chemicals out. We, as Mr. Wadick said, we got the mold needs to be mitigated, even as these were not lethal doses of mold. The roof does have to be fixed so that the building can be protected. I mean, yeah, so I agree with Ashley that things need to be done, but it's not a building that I think, any one of us wouldn't want to walk into, so. And it's not.
All right.
Thank you, Tanya.
Hi.
Wait, hold on, David Tracy's back.
Hi, I'm back. I don't know question, I'm sorry. I was asking about the chemicals that the board didn't know were in the bottom of the mansion that were there, that I heard EnviroScience said should not be there, should not have been there. Mixed chemicals, mixed use, I believe is what they called it, chemicals. Those have since been removed, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And since we knew, okay, great. Since we knew that those chemicals were not supposed to be in there when we found that out and they were removed, has there been any mitigation, such simple mitigation, such as ventilation, opening doors, opening windows to kind of air out the environment, and retesting of that environment now that those mixed use chemicals have been removed?
No, we haven't done any retesting. They've been removed. The ventilation downstairs in that area, there is no windows. This is underneath the building. Okay. The doors are left open, but not enough for fresh air. I think you need induced air, fresh air into that space there. And yes, so everything has been removed, except for where the garage is. We still have oils that are there, like motor oil, WD-40, those oils, which is still chemicals. They consider that chemicals.
So yeah, I don't really understand, this is our property, similar to your home or even a car that you own. And so at this point, we own this property. It is not being used. We're pushing almost 2 years. I think this August will be 2 years that it's been completely vacated. So at the, due to my understanding of the Warburg campus, we're not allowed to sell the property or do anything else. Not that we even want to, but at this point, should we try to do some of those mitigation things, very simple things like open the windows, open the doors, let the fresh air go through. I understand what you just said, Mr. Falcone, so I get it, but should we do those simple things and then try to retest and see if we have the same level of concern or not, and then make some decisions with the motor oils and the oils that you said are still there, and whether or not those belong there or in an actual garage, and then, then make those decisions. Why are we just kind of leaving the building closed up and not retesting? I'm just a little confused about that.
We have more work to be done in there than just the ventilation issues. Okay, so there's many other issues that have to be in there. So just to, the minute you go into some construction, you're gonna have ventilation. The windows are gonna be open naturally, okay? So why bother trying to get induced ventilation, spend the money there when there's other issues to be done in that building first?
Perhaps I'm misunderstanding. It's very possible. But I thought that the report, I heard you say we have 3-4 professionals. All of those reports were when we had mixed use chemicals that we did not know in the mansion. So again, are the reports going to tell me the reports are going to be the same, whether they're there or not, and I'll stop asking. But I'm wondering if the mixed use chemicals that we found out about at the time of these reports had anything to do with the air quality that we all have concerns about.
No, those reports are mainly structural, plaster, the bricks, the roofs. They were separate than the ventilations. I brought a ventilation expert in there because when I was going in there, I was having a little hard time breathing. I put masks on. I won't even get into that. And he tested air quality at that time. And that's when he said the VOCs are high. That's a different test. The three reports that I told you about, 2 engineer reports and AVI, okay? That's all structural safety of the building itself. Has nothing to do with the ventilation.
So I'm confused again. So forgive me again. We, all of us, is the concern the ventilation and the VOCs, or is the concern something else? Because I understood, and maybe I understood incorrectly, this is why I'm asking for clarity. I understood that the main concern was the VOCs that were in the air. And I heard the guy from EnviroScience said he wouldn't spend any large amount of time in the building, but he would put a mask on and go through the building with his own children. So that made me feel like perhaps whatever's causing the VOCs in the air, which I thought were the chemicals that we didn't know were there, if that was mitigated, that perhaps there wouldn't be an issue. Now you're mentioning additional structural concerns. That's the issue. So maybe I'm misunderstanding. I'm going to be quiet, but I'm wondering, what can we do about the air quality? Because I thought that was the concern.
You did get them confused, but that's fine. They're going to address the air quality as well as any other structural if you go to that route. Okay, if you're going to reoccupy that administration building, you'll have to address all of the above, including the VOCs. They're all out of there, but including the ventilation, which BBS already discussed that, how much ventilation would be in that building. But there's many other issues that building needs to be addressed.
Thank you,
So-
Mr. Falcone. I see Terry's hand up.
Yes, thank you. I also just saw Dr. Chase's hand up, and I actually had a question for both Dr. Chase and Mike. So maybe I should let Dr. Chase go first because she might be about to answer my question, and if not, I'll speak after her.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
Please ask your question.
Okay, so excuse me, folks. So to Mike and to Dr. Chase, I guess Mike, first of all, what did that DOE report say? And can we get a copy of that, number one? And number two, Dr. Chase, the contradictory information that you spoke about, also, what did that say? I'm assuming that's not the environmental science report that we learned about last year, but that these are some other reports. And what did that say? And also, can we get copies of that as well?
I can answer both. The report, because I read it also, of the AVI that we received from BBS stated everything is satisfactory. And I understand he says it's satisfactory after things are done. That's the contradiction. Because when you have two engineer reports state one thing, of course, I was with the AVI guy who said the same thing as in the two engineer reports, as well as the fire department, as well as your ventilation expert. So when they all say one thing, and then I think, I'm guessing here, Dr. Chase, but she sees the report of an AVI that says satisfactory, I think she's looking at it, and I do look at it that way too, saying that, wait a minute, how is it that these are saying do not occupy, but the AVI says satisfactory? I think that might be what she's talking about. Dr. Chase?
So yeah, they're completely different. And my job as superintendent is to ensure the health and safety of all people in the school district, whether they're visitors or whether they are employees or whether they're being educated there. So I have to tell you, I was confused. I was confused by the reports, which is why I'm asking the questions that I'm asking. I'm not asking for any other reason but for clarity, because there are people who are texting me, who are employees of the district, who are absolutely concerned while listening to this commentary, because they just want clarity as well. And I don't want to mislead anyone. I don't think that I'd be doing I don't think I'd be doing a service for anyone as a leader of this district. So it just needed some clarity. And as it referenced to the mansion, Mr. Williams, we did get several reports from the mansion. We've gotten BCS reports, we've gotten air quality reports, we've got the enviroscience. So the enviroscience was a little bit different from what I believe Jim is presenting to us today. Enviroscience went into a little bit deeper, not to rehash it, because everyone can see it. It's on YouTube, it's there, where enviroscience did find that there were atmospheric environmental issues. And he used some very strong language in that report. He used some strong language in that presentation. I'm going to be honest, some of the language that was used scared the heck out of people who work at the mansion when they heard it. So so I can understand the concerns that people have for a variety of reasons, which I don't think is appropriate for me to share on the Zoom call, because I want to respect the privacy of individuals. However, I just want to make sure that I don't walk this board into any situation that they don't know about, and that you're not going to be blindsided. I want to make sure that you have accurate information. Mr. Falcone just shared the reports. I see that Tracy put in the chat, how come we didn't get them? Well, I didn't have them. Mr. Falcone, we just got them. In fact, we just got the reports. I am happy to send the board what I have. I have nothing to hide. I've always been forthcoming with you, because we are talking about health and safety, and I have a responsibility to share with you. But I just want to make sure that our decisions about whatever we're going to do, that we also, and I kindly ask, because I will not be here when this happens, that we sit down with the staff from the mansion, from ECP main building, and we have conversations with them, and that we share reports with them, because I want them to be comfortable going in, because I have faith that you're going to do the right thing by them, but they don't know and they don't understand these terms. They hear these big words and people run with it. I think people just need to have clarity and understanding, and to know that you have their best interest at heart. That is all that I ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chase. Just to reiterate, because I don't want this to get lost also, what Ashley said, I, and any board member could correct me if I'm wrong, we have not talked about bringing staff back into the building, especially without all of the issues being thoroughly addressed. So I just wanted to reiterate what Ashley said. Thank you.
And I hope
Antoinette, can you?
Sorry, I hope that my message was clear, and I hope that my message is not going to be misconstrued or misinterpreted, but I wanted to offer clarity because there's a lot of chatter in the chat, and I'm getting a lot of messages, and I just think that we just have to just be transparent about what's happening. Thank you.
I just want to clarify. I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm muted or.
Tracy, go ahead. You're not muted.
Sorry. I just want to clarify. I don't know what other chat is being written, but I just put in the chat. I didn't say why didn't we get the reports. I was just asking. I'm really confused now, and I think everyone heard me say I was confused a couple of times, and I was talking this through with Mr. Falcone about the concerns about the chemicals, but I said I'm really confused now. We don't have these reports at all with a question mark because I'm trying to understand if there's additional information, and I just got clarity that there is additional information. So I just wanted to be clear. I'm not saying why don't we have those reports. I just was trying to clarify if in all the reports we have, which is quite a bit, if I'm missing something or if we didn't have those reports at all. So thank you guys for that. I don't see anything else in the chat, so I don't know if someone else is sending messages that maybe I'm not getting. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, David?
I'm done. I think we have our marching orders in terms of what we need to come back with, and that's a more consolidated report. You have our initial recommendation. We're going to get a little bit more in terms of numbers on the temporary fixes to ECP, and we'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wadick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wadick. Have a good night. Thank you so much.
Nice weekend. Nice week. You're welcome.
Okay. Oh, okay. Are there any other committee reports? Okay, hearing none. We're going to move on to board policy review. Okay, so there are, let me see, there are six six policies to review. You'll see, I believe, there were changes in some, but we can go through and do a quick review, see if anyone have any questions, because I believe we will be approving these on the 16th of March. The first one.
Miss Antoinette, Darden Centron, I would like to dismiss Mr. Falcone if we don't need him any further.
Oh, sure. Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Falcone, I know you work really hard and you're up at 5:30 in the morning in the buildings calling me. So I want you to go home and get some rest. Well, you're already home, but I want you to get some rest. Thank you for your input today, my dear. Have a good one.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Good night, everybody. If you need me, call me. My phone's still on. Okay.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Falcone.
Thank you, Mr. Falcone.
Good night.
Good night. Okay. So the first policy is 7221. That's the participation in graduation ceremonies and activities. Okay. And so if, I believe these are changes that came, or they were updates from Erie 1, Ivy?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So does anybody have any questions or any comments on these? Okay, hearing none on that one there. Okay, and then the next one up is,
Suspension of students.
sorry, yep, 7313, suspension of students. Again, admin weighed in if they needed to. So did our attorneys as well. Again, this is a part of Erie 1 BOCES updating. So does anybody have any questions, any comments about that one? Okay, 7320, which is the alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and other substances in regards to students. Again, they've been reviewed by admin and attorney and updated by Erie 1. Any questions, comments? Okay, 7522, concussion management, also reviewed by both admin and our attorneys. Okay, hearing none. 7616, peripheral intervention strategies, reviewed by both admin and attorneys. Okay, and the last one is 8230, guidance program, reviewed again by attorney with no existing, no recommended changes to existing policy, the same for admin. Does anybody have any questions, comments on that? Okay. Hearing none, we move on. We are on to our budget discussion. Lisa and Dr. Chi.
Thank you. Laser, could you put up the PowerPoint?
Yep, hold on 1 second.
Okay, thank you. So you can go to the next slide, Laser. At the last board meeting, we were charged with getting the tax levy within a 2% increase from this year's levy. In order to do this, we made modifications to draft budget 1 in the areas of general support, instruction, transportation, employee benefits, and interfund transfers. Next slide. Under the general support changes, the following were made. For the Board of Education, if you remember at the last budget workshop, a recommendation was made that one board member attend the NYSBA conference and bring the information back to the rest of the board. So I reduced travel and travel and conference by $2,325. I also decreased supplies under the Board of Education for food that was removed, as was done this year, bringing the total of that to $2,600. Under central administration, the projected BOCES cost for our financial services in the business office has been reduced by $15,477 to reflect next year's costs per BOCES runs that they've provided to us. And then at the last, as David said, at the last audit committee meeting, it was suggested that the district have 2 in-depth internal risk audits instead of one, which would accelerate the process of the 8 remaining areas to have an in-depth audit done. After speaking with John Tobin and Associates to get a cost, he estimated that the increase would be approximately $15,000 to get both of these done in the next school year. Under operations and maintenance, with the past boiler and electrical improvements that have been done, we've seen a savings under utilities, specifically with fuel and electric. Tying these in with an energy performance contract would further help in energy savings and efficiencies to the district in future budgets, which is something to think about. So we proposed decreasing utilities by $125,000. Additionally, moving forward with a potential capital project, as has just been discussed, will allow us to put some of our budgetary improvements and upgrades into a project instead of the budget. The expenses that we've budgeted for the mansion and the ECP building have been reduced just to keep these buildings up and running. And then other budgeted repairs and maintenance have also been modified to an as-needed basis, again, dependent on any repair projects and or a capital project. We also originally had paving of the bus garage parking lot in there, but we've since modified that to just include funds to do repairs where needed, as has been done this year. Mr. Falcone and I are also developing a multi-year cycle of replacements for such things as equipment, shades, curtains, any of those ongoing items that need to be replaced throughout our campus. By doing this and making a multi-year improvement plan, we will be better able to manage and budget the monies that is needed. So and then under central data processing, it has always been the intention when doing these budgets that we didn't want to decrease any supplies, materials, contractual items, equipment, etc. that was budgeted in this school year. We didn't want to take that away for next school year. The decrease here of $10,000 was just an increase that was asked for. I kept the dollar amount within the limit that was budgeted for this year. So under the general support function, we're proposing a decrease of $675,218. Next slide. The next area is instruction, and draft 2 does not replace any administrative positions through attrition. And then under instruction, there have been discussions about adding additional resources and programs for students to continue supporting their needs during these uncertain times. So we've included here a math specialist, additional academic support during the school year, and also a need to reinstate a secretarial position to support contractual obligations. These 3 items here for positions total $408,688. We've eliminated $40,305 of equipment that was budgeted individually under schools. After further researching the equipment that was budgeted, this computer equipment should have been budgeted in the technology department, which after reviewing that budget, it is there. So it's safe to say we could eliminate this $40,305. And as I just stated before, we want to keep all of our supplies and materials in line with what was budgeted this year. This is not a cut to anybody's budget. It's just additional expenses that were asked for. We kept everything in line with this year. So the instructional component was increased by a net total of $180,376. Next. I spoke with the Director of Transportation to review what we had budgeted under contract transportation to see if there was any place that we could have any savings or make any adjustments. And even if the state requires in-person instruction next year, 5 days a week, he feels that he will be able to consolidate some runs that are already in existence, possibly modify some after-school transportation, and still stay within the anticipated CPI, which will be released in May of 2021, which is the CPI that a contracted transportation can only increase by by law. So we are proposing that we can decrease the transportation budget by $250,000 for next year. Next. So under employee benefits, with the addition of the staff that we proposed in the instructional side, employee benefits would have to be adjusted to reflect the increases in the employee retirement system, the teacher retirement system, and Social Security. We would see a savings in health insurance, since some of those numbers have come in, and the consortiums that we are dealing with are trying to keep the increases as low as possible due to the times that we are in. So what was budgeted, the projections that were budgeted have come in lower. So we would be able to save $166,320 there. For the net savings or decrease in employee benefits of $289, excuse me. Next. So in keeping with what has been budgeted over the last 2 years, which was between $1.3 and $1.33 million to go to the capital fund to be able to help fund any capital project that would be proposed, I decreased the amount that was originally budgeted here by $281,000 to bring it to the $1.3 million, which was reflected in that chart that I had shown the board during the facilities meeting for the capital project. So all of these modifications together total $1,144,131 of savings. The next several slides are going to show you exactly what we did in draft 1, but just with these modifications. So this first slide just shows you the major expenses by category, and then it goes on to show you by function. Next slide. Thank you. And again, this shows you the different categories that we just spoke about. And then it breaks each one of these functions down in more detail of what falls under each. And it is exactly like it was in draft 1. So you would have the general support, and then next you would have instruction. And then after that, you would have transportation, employee benefits, and then interfund transfers. Okay, next. Okay, so again, we asked what would be done with the interfund transfer to the capital fund of the $1.3 million. And it is the intention, from what I understand from the facilities committee, that this would be added to any capital project that would be proposed. But what we have to also remember is that once we start the vestibule in the high school, we will have to provide a handicap ramp. And that money will need to come from somewhere, and that is estimated to cost approximately $250,000. So that's something that we need to keep in the back of our mind. Next. So it is the plan to put up a second proposition again, as was put up this year, to ask the public that any excess funds over 4% fund balance be placed in the repair reserve for any future needs of the district. Next. So on the revenue side, you asked that we keep the tax levy within 2%, and with this budget, we're proposing a budget of $73,182,000, which is a $1,840,443 increase over this school year, which would result in a tax levy of 1.98%. I did decrease some miscellaneous revenues, and after further conversations with Westchester County and New York State, the governor, as I told you before, the governor has directed the Division of Budget and the Office of the State Comptroller to withhold money back from every county to go into a fund to help hospitals and nursing homes that are in fiscal stress because of the pandemic. So we have just experienced our first cut through the last quarter, and they are proposing that this will happen all next year, to be monies to be put into this fund. So we're anticipating that we will have a reduction. So part of the largest decrease in our miscellaneous revenues is because of our sales tax and what the future holds. And once the restrictions are lifted and people start traveling more, will they go out of our county to do some of their shopping. So all of that was tied in with this. So we decreased sales tax by 500,000, and I decreased rent of facilities by 33,000. If you remember, the bus garage pays on what a percentage of what we charge them, and if we are going to consolidate some runs, then that dollar amount will be a lesser amount. Next slide. So here's the tax cap calculation. It's exactly what it was the last time. It's just that last line, the proposed levy. I've substituted that with what we are proposing now, the $62,912,841. So we would still remain under the tax cap. It would be a 2.59% increase budget to budget, but what we should be most concerned with for our taxpayers is what our increase is levy to levy. And right now that is the 1.98%, which is where we were asked to get it down to. So what is next? We're waiting for our final state aid numbers. There is absolutely no chatter out there in the business official world on what is going on or where they're headed. We haven't seen or heard any of the numbers yet. So we're patiently waiting on that since the state's fiscal year ends at the end of this month. And then additionally, we're waiting on it on the direction of the board on where you would like to see us go from here. And just a reminder that our budget vote is on May 18th from 7 to 9, and it's still to be determined whether it'll be an in-person vote or if it will be by mail, again, like it was last year.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa. I see Tanya hand is up with a question.
Yes, so I have 3 questions. My first question is regarding the academic support for the 297,000. Is that going to be contractual, or is that going to be a hiring? And
I think I can answer that, and Dr. Chase and Dr. Reynolds correct me if I'm wrong or chime in. I believe that that is not extra hires, that's contractual.
No, it's, oh, okay.
Oh, no, go ahead, go right ahead.
So what would that be for? Contractual what?
Dr. Chase, if I may. So the intent there is it's a mixture of both. It will be both contractual and potential hiring in the event that we need to offer additional AIS opportunities for any of our students, whether it's through after school programming, through weekend academy type programming, or over the summer. So it'll be a mixture of both.
And I'm just curious, I mean, how did you come up with that number then if you really haven't determined exactly what you're doing? I mean, 297.87 sounds very precise for something that is to be determined.
So that number was determined based on what we've implemented in years prior. So summer academies and additional opportunities during the school year, whether it's weekend, like I said, or after school programming. We compiled all of that information, made some projections based on that, but also at a reduced opportunity for students. So that's how we were able to come to those totals.
Okay, I have 2 more questions, Lisa. Did you actually say $250,000 for a ramp?
Yes, that's exactly what I was quoted, or actually Mr. Falcone told me that he was quoted that by the architects that we should set aside at least $250,000 for a handicap ramp in the front of the high school. Yes.
I'm sorry, this is just a simple like ramp for 250,000?
It's my understanding that the ramp has to come off the steps, but it has to go down. It has to be long and then come back around from what they're designing. It's not just a simple a ramp up the steps kind of situation.
Okay. I mean, that sounds pretty steep nonetheless, but okay. All right. My last question is, do you have any sense of what our COVID savings are going to be, or is, I mean?
I am currently working on some of those numbers.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I had two questions. The math specialist, is that that's a new position for, and it will be for someone coming new to our district? Or, yeah, that's what I want to know.
It could be an internal candidate, but it is a new position. Doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be someone from outside.
If it's internal, that would be that wouldn't be like what do we call it? Like an additional assignment. That would be like they would be leaving their current position and moving into that position if it's internal.
Well, that hasn't been structured yet because it could be a candidate who, we have to continue looking at our enrollment, and the enrollment can predict whether or not certain positions could possibly be redirected. So that could be an opportunity to redirect a position, and then that would then be a savings.
Okay.
If that is going to be the case. So that hasn't been determined as of yet because we're still analyzing enrollment and still analyzing positions as it relates to enrollment. So that could very well be the case.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
I do. I have.
I heard David and then Tracy and then Miss Carrie.
Yes.
So I need to know whether the administrative retirement is something that we can share what the position is, or do I need to do that closed session?
I think that's closed session.
Okay.
Tracy?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. So I have a question. Is there room in this agenda if you wanted to reinstate the ALP director positioning or have some sort of stipend for someone to do the ALP program?
So it's my understanding to reinstate the ALP means that you're going to have to offer it to the person who was there prior to. So if that is the board's desire, then that can be something that can definitely be entertained.
Okay, thank you. I just, I don't know what the full board feels, or, we get recommendations from the administration on this, but I do know that I would like to see at least that program coordinated again. It's difficult this year because of COVID, of course, but I'm just wondering how we would coordinate that program.
Chase, I see you're unmuted. Were you gonna say something?
No, I'm happy to have I'm happy to entertain that.
Okay. Miss Carrie?
I saw somebody else, but didn't Terry have his hand up?
No, it was David, Tracy, and then now you.
Okay. I have two questions. The first question is, I suppose this probably is closed session too, but I'm going to ask and you can tell me it is. What line is the CPSC, CSC chair on in the budget? That's number one.
Well, that would be under the instructional section of the budget. And if you look at the page that has the instruction detail, where it starts with administration, regular instruction, special education, it would be budgeted under special education.
So this person is a is this a consultant job or a regular job?
This is a consultant position. Lisa Raymond, can you just verify if that position is paid from a grant?
Actually, I believe if not the whole thing, a portion of it, yes, is paid by a grant.
Right. I just want to make sure that we clarify that it is paid.
Yes,
from
I'm
a
sorry.
grant.
Yes, it is.
And the person who's in that position now is a consultant to the district.
And I would like very much to see the amounts of money that we put in and how much the grant supplies for us, please. I'd like to see that. Thank you. And the other thing is, what position does administrative retirement represent?
That was the same thing I asked.
Yeah, we said
Closed
that
session.
was for executive session.
Oh, okay. Okay, and can you explain the transfers to general fund, please?
The transfer to the general fund? You mean the transfer to the capital fund?
Well, capital, yeah, I guess that's what it is.
Okay, so in this school year, 1.33 million will be transferred, and in last school year, 1.3 million was transferred out. It's proposed to keep that number at the 1.3 million to transfer to the capital fund to help pay for the capital project that is proposed, that the board will approve in upcoming board meetings.
Phase one.
Phase one.
Okay.
Okay, Ashley, I see your hand.
Thank you. Ms. Raymond, just curious, I know we had talked about during our Finance and Facilities Committee, the fact that it seems like our governor is going to strip the STAR benefits that we're having to taxpayers basically and kind of put them into an aging out stage and eventually lose them. And I know during that conversation, we had mentioned that there was some advocacy going on both from the parent side as well as school districts, the superintendents of businesses across the county, et cetera, et cetera. I was just curious if you heard any update on that, on the chatter. Is this still the plan or anything along those lines? Thank you.
Well, the governor still has it in his budget proposal, but I can tell you that a meeting that I attended with Southern Westchester BOCES business officials and various legislature people in Westchester, it is something that they are very adamant about that is not going to get through. They are very passionate about STAR not being coupled in with state aid because that's not what it is there for. But since then, there has been there's been nothing on it either way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions on the budget? Dr. Chase.
What changes would the board like to see?
I'm good with the 2%. I think that it's about right.
Ms. Carey?
Yeah?
No, I heard your phone, so I wasn't sure if you were trying to say something.
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you.
I'll wait to close session for the rest of my stuff.
Thank you. Anyone else? I guess I would say one thing. I'd like to get more information about last year's COVID savings, this year's current COVID savings as well. My other question is, I don't have another question, but that's where one of the information that I would like to get. I think being right under 2% is good. I wait to see the next draft.
So in order for us to do the next draft, we need input from the board because we just need to know what would you like to see?
I think Tracy made a suggestion. I know for me, like I said, I would like to get the COVID savings to see how that is impacting the budget and will impact the past budget and will impact this one as well. I think Tanya had questions too in regards to it.
Yeah, I wanted a little more detail about the cost of these various programs for $300,000. If you could sort of make a list, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Right. I mean, we got the questions. We just would like to know, are we where the board as a whole would like for us to see? Do you believe that your constituents, the community will be comfortable with this? Do you want us to do more shaving? Time is of essence, so we just kind of need to have some direction. And I'm saying this simply because there's a budget newsletter that has to go out. And I know Evelyn has been chomping at the bit in terms of trying to get this underway. So with spring break coming, I just want to be we have fun.
It's important that the process be completed, that the areas of savings that we're looking for, that we go ahead and do our diligence and make sure there isn't money laying on the table. If the process says 2% is where we're at, I can live as a taxpayer with the 2%. We just want to make sure that we've done our due diligence.
I agree with David. That's what I was saying.
So everyone's comfortable with 2%?
Yes. So long as we get the details, yeah.
The details and the savings.
Right.
Terry?
I'm comfortable with the 2%. If you want to provide some more information, good, but I'm comfortable with the information you've provided and certainly with the number where we've landed.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry.
Antoinette? Yeah, so the next, I guess, iteration will have something including the ALP department. I'm saying ALP director because that's what we just had, but you guys can make that recommendation. I don't know if there's been an assessment on the ALP program at all this year and how it's been doing, if there's been any feedback from the students, from the teachers, from the parents on their experience in ALP this year. And then from there, I'm looking for some sort of a recommendation. Are you going to tell me things have gone great this year and we don't need an ALP director as last year? Or are you going to tell me, you know what, we need to reinstate the ALP director, or do we need to have a special assignment for like an ALP coordinator? I don't know, but I'm asking about the ALP program and how it can be better coordinated for within the budget for next year, if we need to add back a director or not. That's all I'm asking. Thanks.
Just for clarity, I never ever stated that we didn't need it last year. We needed it. So, unfortunately, that was no longer, in the budget for whatever reason, but I think we've always advocated for keeping that position. But like I said, in executive session, we can speak more freely about that position and contractually and legally what that means to reinstate it, because I think you need to have a clear understanding of what that means and what we're stating out publicly. And I'm just going to caution that we just be careful. And I'm not saying this to be sarcastic in any way. I'm saying this to protect everyone who's on the Zoom. I think we should not discuss that until we get into executive session.
Does anyone have any other questions? Anything to share about this budget presentation? Okay, hearing none, it's anticipated adjournment to executive session. Can I get a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the employment history of particular persons being considered for board action this evening and the next meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. We're going into executive session. Everybody, if we could take a quick 5-minute
break
for Ben. All right, thank you. All right, Lisa, let me know when we're ready.